Welcome to Psychology the Daf. We are in Gemara Pesachim, Daf Chav Vav. This Gemara says an interesting story. It said about Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai that he would sit in the street adjacent to the Temple Mount in the shade of the Heichal and expound to a large number of people all day long. The Gemara brings it as a proof to understand whether or not, if one inadvertently benefits from something, are they liable or not. Here he might be benefiting from the shade of the Beis Hamikdash, which he really shouldn't use for secular purposes, or even purposes that are not as holy as service in the Beis Hamikdash. But there seems to me something poignant and prophetic about this image of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai teaching Torah literally and metaphorically in the shadow of the temple. Rav Yochanan's personal life was particularly within the shadow of the temple, in a sense that he had lived through the destruction of the Second Temple. But that is not the only shadow that occurred. While Jerusalem was under siege, he secretly established diplomatic relations with Vespasian, an act considered traitorous by the Bar Yunai, the Zealots, who believed that they must fight the Romans, as we see in the Gemara in Gittin on Daf Vav. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's foresight, and shall we even say shadowy behavior, allowed him to rebuild the Sanhedrin in Yavne under the protection of the Roman government, which allowed continuity of Jewish religious life beyond the Beis Hamikdash. And there's another aspect of Yochanan's life that also existed within the shadow of the Beis Hamikdash, and that was he made many takanas in Yavne, which involved modifying the laws in order for ritual to remain significant in a world that was without a Beis Hamikdash. Examples of this include expanding the days of Lulav and Esrog outside of the Beis Hamikdash, which we find in Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, Perek Daled, Mishnah Gimel, and to allow the blowing of the shofar on Shabbos Rosh Hashanah in Yavne as a substitute for the Beis Hamikdash. We find that in Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, Perek Daled, Mishnah Aleph, amongst many other takanas. Now, hindsight is 20/20. But it's important to imagine how confusing it was for people living in Rabbi Yochanan's time. Not all his actions were appreciated even by his colleagues, let alone the Bar Yunai, the Zealots, who saw him as seditious. See, for example, the resistance of the sages of Bnei Beseira to his edict regarding shofar, which we find discussed in a brisa in Gemara Rosh Hashanah on Daf Chav Amud Beis, or Rabbi Akiva, who criticized Rabbi Yochanan for not asking Vespasian for more concessions, such as saving Yerushalayim, which is in Gittin on Daf Vav. So the lesson is that when you're in a chaotic situation, even when you're making the right choices, it's hard for others to see them as right, and there often is one visionary who can see the future clearly and knows what to do. But there are also many others who think they see the correct path forward, and they're in error. May we have the wisdom to follow the right leaders and not the misguided ones.